Hey guys, Josh with Carl's Mower and Saw. You stepped up, you went big power, 2.7 horsepower STIHL FS 251 string trimmer. And today we're going to talk about what you need to know to get the most out of this machine, to have the longest life, to have the least amount of problems. So we're going to go over kind of some of the maintenance things, some tips, some tricks. We'll look about how to rewind the head, how to take the head off, potential attachments. So let's start with the basics, right? I mean, it's always good to know what we're walking into, and hopefully your dealership has walked you through this. At Carl's Mower and Saw, we try to do this every time. Something to look back on is always useful. Safety first. This thing is massive on its horsepower, 2.7 horse. And let me tell you, when that line head picks up a rock and chucks it back at your face, you are getting hit with probably a roundhouse, and it does not feel good. So although safety glasses are good and of the utmost importance, getting nailed right here with a small rock hurts like a son of a gun. And that's why I like the STIHL brush defender. I put this thing on and my whole face is protected, and I'm taking care of my ears. This thing is popping out some high RPMs in the 12 to 13,000 RPM. So you can imagine it's putting out some noise. There's no way that you're gonna get around that. So face, eye, pants, good shoes. Not a bad idea if you're out doing some brush cutting to wear long sleeves, but just think about safety as you grab this thing and go out to use it. Okay, let's get into some of the more fun stuff, right? Safety, you talk about safety all the time, Josh, who cares, right? But let's talk about what we're gonna run for fuel. And we got a couple different options. My guess is if you own this guy, you've got some pretty decent sized property, so you're gonna be going through a fair amount of fuel. At which point in time, grabbing the STIHL HP Ultra and mixing it with gas works great. Now make sure that gas is fresh and ethanol free. We're not just running down to any old gas station, getting the lowest quality crap that we can get. We're trying to be very intentional about finding an ethanol free fuel. And we also want to be intentional about how fast we go through our fuel. The biggest problems that we face at Carl's on any brand is fuel. And all the time, it's old gas, bad gas, varnished gas. So we want to help you avoid that. So run good gas, run fresh gas. And that's why I usually mix up a gallon, because I know that I'm going to go through this every month. I don't want gas that's 3 months old. Now, if you're not a heavy user, or when hibernation time comes, because you're probably not going to be using this tool in January in the Pacific Northwest. You might, but usually this is something that's just going to be hanging in the shed or in the garage. That's when you want to have Moto Mix in it. This stuff is amazing. It's expensive. I'll own that. It's about 10 bucks for a quart in 2024, but it has a 3-year shelf life. It's a 93 octane ethanol free. This is better than any pump gas that you're going to buy. So when it comes to storage and hibernation, this is what I recommend that it sits with. Okay, we got the fuel out of the way. Let's talk about how to string the head, and then we'll look at greasing the gearbox, where the air filter is, and then we'll do a first startup from there. So stringing the head, or rewinding the head, to get into that, we're gonna push on this white tab here on the side with one thumb. See if my fingers are working this morning, and bam, the cap is going to pop off. Use my table. I'm gonna flip it upside down, and I'm gonna take out the spool, like so. Here's the spool in my hand. I do have a more in-depth video on rewinding this head and some of the frustrations I have experienced when I wasn't doing it correct or properly. This is a good feeding head. It's been a go-to head for STIHL for years, and honestly, most people, once they use it, won't go back. I know there's some lovers of other line heads out there, great, but just talk about a durable head, a head that's easy to get parts for, a head that's fairly easy to load, and its feeding characteristics are good. This STIHL auto cut head kicks butt. Okay, so now that that is empty, I'm gonna go to my trimmer line and I'm gonna pull off 3 arm lengths for me. Some people may do 4 arm lengths. Some guys that are like 10 foot, they may only pull off 2. But you really wanna put in about 20 feet of line. And I'm gonna keep it as one piece, and I'm gonna cut the ends at a little angle. That helps me feed that into that little slot right there, and that little slot right there, okay? And then when it's in that position, I wanna come backwards and really set the hook. That holds the trimmer line in place, and now I kind of switch hands, and my right hand becomes my spinner, and my left hand, I am feeding the line between my thumb and my middle finger. So just wind this up and around we go. So as we wind this up, as we get this full to the end, we're going to take the line, thank you, and I'm gonna lock it into these 0.095 spots. So it says 0.095, I'm gonna lock that one in, and I'm gonna come 180 degrees and lock that one in. See that loop? Now is when I need my cutter. Cut that in the middle, snipped. Let's go back to putting this in place. This spool is gonna set down in there. I'm gonna push down, line it up so that my line being held up aligns with the sleeves. Feed that out, spin it 180, feed the other side out, grab the cap. Good to go. Easy, right? I think so. Now, mind you, I've done it hundreds, if not thousands of times. But now you got an idea how to do it. Watch the video again. Stop by Carl's Mower and Saw. We'll give you a refresher. While we're at this end, we can talk about two things. Talk about greasing the gearbox. There's a screw here right on the end, and it's going to come loose with either the T27 Torx or a 13 millimeter. And I'll take this plug out, and every 50 hours, how do I keep track of that? Good question. Do I keep hash marks on the wall, or do I just plan on, if I'm most people, 50 hours a year is a lot of use, so just grease this every year. If you're finding yourself using it more, just hit it twice a year. Pop that out. We have this little tube of grease right here that is going to thread into this, tighten that up, a light squeeze, and spinning this head. Think about like toothpaste size. That's what you're putting in every time that you do the greasing of the head. Now this machine is capable of running a brush blade, and in order to do so, we're gonna have to pick up a brush blade installation kit. That's gonna include a larger guard as well as a nut and a washer set that holds the blade in place. In order to take the head off, I'm gonna use this pin that all these tools here are gonna have come with your FS 251. You're gonna get a little screwdriver, put this in the junk drawer. It's cool, but I don't want you messing with the carburetor. This one, super useful for adjusting every screw or loosening or tightening every screw on this machine. And this would be useful for changing out the spark plug. We'll get up to it. This pin, this little rod goes right in this hole, and as I push that in and rotate the head, you hear that click? That locks the gearbox and allows me to spin the head off, and that's clockwise. We'll spin the whole head off. Now when that comes off, you see that silver thing that's stuck in there? That has to go back in place. This should never be left off of your machine, or you're gonna be coming into your local dealer saying, help, my head won't spin, or I can't get, how does this help? Or how does this happen? How do I get the head off of there? So make sure this is always in place. Once that head is off, that's what we're gonna be able to put on a blade. We're gonna be able to put on different heads, whether that's a Duro cut, a poly cut. There's all kinds of options for what we could do on the end of this as needed. Stop by, we'll go over what cool things you can put with it. Moving up the shaft, a couple other things that might be worth paying attention to. One is, where is the placement of the handle? How tall am I? I want this to be comfortable. This is gonna be on my arms for quite a long time. So I want to really make sure this matches my height and my posture and how I'm going to stand. So maybe adjusting the handle. The next would be adjusting where the harness strap hooks up to. So right here is where the shoulder strap's going to hook. And we've got a couple options on shoulder strap. One is we have this single little shoulder strap like this. This is very common and the norm for what's called a loop handle trimmer. If you're running one of the machines with the bike handle or the bullhorn handle, then you'll usually want to run a double harness setup. And the reason is, and let me get this shoulder strap stretched out here and I'll show you. So this is going to go over like so. I'm going to clip it in. Now the weight of this machine, when it's set right, and I want to move this up a little bit. It's going to balance out, and I'm not going to be holding it with my hands. It's going to be on my shoulders. With a loop handle trimmer, we generally end up standing like this. You kind of stand with one foot in front of the other. With a bike handle trimmer, we generally end up standing like this. So we're standing straight and the machine is coming along perpendicular to us versus us almost running parallel to the machine. When I do this with a double harness, it really restricts and challenges my movement. So usually a double harness on a single loop handle is not the answer, but we're trying. If you're having an issue with the weight, it might be worth peeking at. All right, a couple more things on the maintenance end. We talked about how to wind it, how to grease it. We also need to pay attention to the air filter. We're out there running this sucker hard all day long, and we're busting the brush, and we're throwing dead grass up in the air. And this massive 2.7 horsepower engine running at 12,000 plus RPMs is sucking in all kinds of dust and dirt, and this air filter becomes very important to conserving or to the life of this machine. So this is my air filter. It's a paper air filter. Boom. I want to tap it out. I want to hold it up. Can I see light through it? If I cannot see light through it, buy a new one. Throw a new one in. So keep an eye on your air filter. And I would say, depending on the use, we have some heavy commercial operators. They're checking this every day. If you're a homeowner, if you've got 5 acres and you're going to go out every couple of Saturdays and run it hard for a few hours, you're probably checking it every couple months. It's easy enough, right? You saw me loosen 2 screws. The screws are captive, so I don't need to worry about losing them. Keep an eye on that. The spark plug, tighten this up real quick. The spark plug is right on the top under this black protector knob. I don't know what you want to call that. We'll just call it a spark plug protector. Purpose is so that if you drop something on concrete, you're not busting the spark plug off and causing damage. It also is keeping the heat away from your elbow. It's also directing air down to keep the engine cool. So once I take one screw loose, and again, a captive screw so I can't lose it. When I can use it, but I can't lose it. Thank you, STIHL. And when I take this spark plug boot off, the first time, it's going to be tight. And if I grab it like I would expect to and just pull straight up, it usually will come loose with so much force that I can end up pulling this spark plug boot off of the wire. And that sucks. It's something you don't want to do. So usually I'm just going to take and wiggle that off of there. Boom, spark plug boot off. And now I can grab my tool that came with it and change the spark plug. Personally, I just do one once a year. They're cheap enough, it's easy enough, and it's really just an assurance that I'm not going to have problems. Put that back on, we'll put the cover back on, and that clips, there's a little clip on the back that clips into the housing, sets in place. And while we're here, we're going to talk about one more thing that is very, very, very rarely used in the Pacific Northwest, might be used in other parts of the world, and that is a winter summer shutter. You see this black thing? There's a snowflake and a sun on there. Most of the time when we're using this machine, the temperature is going to be above freezing. But if for some reason you're out in 20-degree weather, rocking this thing, crushing blackberries, cutting reed canary grass, you might need to switch this. So I'm going to loosen, and here's a non-captive screw, so don't lose this screw. And I'm going to pull this black piece out. You see that? So this is what's called the shutter. This keeps the heat of the engine, or reduces the heat from the engine getting to the carburetor. When it's cold out, I want to flip it around, and now the window is open, allowing the engine heat to keep the carburetor warmed up, preventing what's called icing. And don't swap it. I'm just going to say, until you have a carburetor ice up, do not swap this, because if you swap it and you forget to go back to summer mode and now it's 75, 80 degrees out, you will do damage to your machine. So I would recommend keeping it in summer. I know there's a couple applications that might warrant it, but for the most part, that's not the world we live in. So just a safety thing. I wanted to point it out. People ask about it. What is this? Oh, it's December. I should be on snowflake mode. No, probably not. If you're using it in December, it's probably 40 degrees and not freezing cold. Okay, gas. Gas is going to go right here. I'm going to loosen the cap. I already put gas in this. So how are we going to start it up? Well, first of all, I'm going to make sure I have my safety gear nearby. I'm going to put the fuel in it. I'm going to pump this primer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I cannot flood it by priming it. I could keep going. I could go to 10 times. Doesn't matter. What I'm looking to do is suck the fuel up out of the tank, push it through the carburetor and back into the tank. So now the fuel is at the, the fire point where I want it to be. Then I'm going to choke it, and the choke is by pushing in this black on the front and rotating counterclockwise. This choke is attached to the throttle cable. So when I squeeze the throttle, did you hear that click? I shut the choke off. So very carefully, you want to grab the handle without grabbing the throttle trigger, and 1, 2. Traditionally, that's going to start on the second pull. This one had not been started yet. And then let this thing warm up. This is a big engine with a lot of power, and one of the worst things you can do is just grab it and just hit it hard right out of the gate. Let it run for a half a minute or something and warm up. Work that throttle up, give it kind of some high throttle, low throttle before you go out and do some serious work. I missed how to shut it off. That's pretty obvious with this stop button here, but you're gonna push the button, it's gonna kill it, and then it's a return to run. I'm ready to go again. One other little thing while we're looking at this throttle is over time, this throttle cable can stretch. And so when I squeeze this trigger, I may not get full throttle. I may be running at, say, 75, 80%. And it quickly, very nice steel, has put a screw right in the bottom, and I can tighten that up and shorten that throttle and just compensate for the wear on the throttle cable. There we go, the STIHL FS 251R. Check out the full line of STIHL products at Carl's Mower and Saw. Maybe the 251R is too big for you. Maybe you need a little itty bitty FS 38. That's fine. Stop by and let us help you find the right tool for your lawns.